Brics is striking back. They want to use real, tangible assets to counter the chaos of the United States. Their first move is launching asset exchanges for commodities such as gold, rare earth elements, and energy without using the USD. And their next step could very well be a new payment system. Independent, sovereign, and fully de-dollarized. It's no exaggeration to say that the global political economic order built on the USD is under immense pressure, with U.S. national debt surpassing $36 trillion and projected to hit $37 trillion by the end of the year. The unbearable heat of this debt bomb has pushed Eastern powers to the brink, forcing them to rise up. The banner of rebellion has been raised, and an inevitable clash on the global chessboard may soon erupt. AD shared chat CBT only 220,000 VND at songuin.com. Not personalized, no unnecessary complexity, but still powerful, fast, and intelligent. Visit songuin.com to order and receive hands-on installation support. End AD. In the previous century, power belonged to those who held nuclear weapons. But in the 21st century, the strongest weapons are no longer warheads. They are gold, rare earth metals, and energy. These are the elements that feed industries, drive technology, and sustain economic order. Whoever controls them won't need to fire a single shot, yet the world will still bow. Brics' counteroffensive is not just a financial experiment. It is a civilizational uprising. Nations once dismissed as peripheral are now rising. This is the right to define real value, not through the promises of banks but through human labor and real resources. For the first time in nearly a century, the global monetary order is no longer a Western monopoly. The balance of power is tilting east, toward places where gold bars, oil barrels, grain harvests, and/or mines have become ballots deciding the future. The weakening of the USD is not the end of the world economy. The world will not collapse, it will merely crown a new king. The paper money empire is nearing its end, giving way to a new era in which value comes not from printing capacity but from the ability to produce and protect resources. As faith in paper evaporates, humanity must return to true value: gold, land, data, and energy. These are foundations that cannot be printed, counterfeited, or sanctioned with a simple account freeze. The birth of the dollar empire. For 100 years, the world has lived under the reign of U.S. paper money. If the 19th century belonged to gunpowder and warships, then the 20th century was ruled by a far subtler weapon: pieces of paper bearing the faces of American presidents. After World War II left Europe in ruins, the U.S. emerged as the last economy standing, holding 2/3 of the planet's gold reserves. From the vaults of Fort Knox, Washington stepped into the Bretton Woods negotiations in 1944 and laid the foundation for a new global financial order in which all major currencies were pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar itself was pegged to gold. This alone was enough to turn the United States into the world's central bank, deciding the value of everything from rice to oil. Yet barely 30 years later, the US broke its own rules. In 1971, President Richard Nixon abandoned the gold standard, meaning the USD would no longer be backed by real gold. From that moment, the Federal Reserve's printing machine ran at full power. The US could print hundreds of billions of dollars without mining a single ounce of gold, and they did exactly that, to fund wars in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea, and the Middle East. Every bomb dropped represented millions of dollars created out of thin air. But money printing was only step one. The US also built an entire system to capture the world through the dollar. First came the petrodollar, a secret pact with Saudi Arabia and OPEC that all oil would be priced and traded in USD. Any country wanting energy had to hold dollars. Global capital and assets then poured into the US like a flood, exchanged for paper printed almost for free. Next were the SWIFT network and the IMF, two arms of American influence. Any cross-border money transfer required going through systems controlled by Washington. This was domination so elegant they didn't need to fire a shot. The dollar's power begins to crack. Today, the US shoulders more than $36 trillion in debt, over 120% of GDP. A currency once seen as the symbol of trust is losing real value. As the Fed prints more to repay its debt, inflation spreads worldwide. Poorer countries pay the price with their labor and resources. Every U.S. bailout pumps global food and energy prices higher. The dollar is both a savior and a shackle. But when faith weakens, even the mightiest paper empire can collapse with a single gust of wind called de-dollarization. The rise of Brics, the dollar's first real challenger. For nearly a century, the world breathed in sync with the USD. But now, a silent resistance is rising across the East and the global South. This movement is called Brics, once merely an economic term, now a coalition mounting the first real financial counterstrike. Founded in 2009 by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, Brics initially sought only to balance the G7. But by 2025, it expanded to include Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE, nations endowed with vast oil reserves, gold wealth, and geopolitical influence. If the G7 represents an aging, indebted industrial order, Brics represents a youthful, resource-rich, ambitious new world. Their mission is not just to balance power, but to flip the global monetary board entirely. In September 2025, Brics launched independent exchanges for gold, rare earth elements, and strategic metals, outside the control of London, New York, and Chicago. And the boldest part, no USD allowed. All transactions settle in local currencies or real commodities: gold, oil, gas, agricultural goods, or precious metals. This was a direct strike at the heart of Western finance. Real assets versus paper power. Brics has real leverage. China controls 75% of global rare earth processing. Russia holds vast oil, gas, and gold. Brazil owns 90% of global niobium reserves. Combined, Brics controls 40% of global oil, 70% of cobalt, 50% of nickel, 1/3 of global grain, 500+ tons of gold reserves. The West has paper. Brics has the treasure. In a century where chips, missiles, batteries, and AI all depend on rare metals, Brics effectively controls the throat of the industrial world. Yet Brics does not seek to violently overthrow the dollar. Instead, they erode it slowly by changing payment habits. By 2025, 68% of intra-Brics trade abandoned USD. Russia and China now use local currencies for 90% of bilateral trade. Saudi Arabia accepts yuan for 12% of its oil. Even India quietly pays Russia in yuan instead of dollars. Every non-USD oil contract is a brick removed from the dollar's fortress. No one has declared war, yet the monetary order is rotting from within. A silent monetary revolution. Brics knows they cannot replace the dollar with a new hegemony. Instead, they offer an alternative. A world where no nation is forced to trade in someone else's currency. Their revolution happens not on battlefields but on commodity exchanges, gold vaults, and the dashboards of central banks. This is a war without bullets, but its destructive power rivals nuclear finance. Brics is turning de-dollarization into a quiet revolution where every local currency transaction is a shot fired at the heart of the dollar empire. Gold and data, the new weapons of the 21st century. If the 20th century was the era of infinite printed paper, the 21st century marks the spectacular return of gold, a metal once dismissed as irrelevant. Gold produces no yield, cannot be printed, and cannot be manipulated by speeches or committees. It is pure, absolute trust. For 10 straight months, China has aggressively stockpiled gold, driving prices to historic highs. Each ton imported is not just storage, it's a brick in the foundation of a post-dollar financial order. Gold is replacing U.S. treasuries as the universal trust anchor. But Brics is not stopping there. They are building a parallel financial infrastructure. Russia's SPFS, China's CIPS, unified into BricPay, a cross-border payment network without dollars or Western intermediaries. Transactions are blockchain-secured and integrated with CBDCs. Their new empire is backed not by debt, but by real assets and real technology. In a world where information moves faster than money, whoever controls data flows controls currency value itself. Brics now holds both. Gold equals value. Data equals trust. The consequences for the West. For nearly a century, The USD was the heart of the global financial system. But no empire, even a monetary one, is immortal. As Brics builds commodity-backed exchanges and payment corridors, the USD loses its monopoly. Nations no longer need dollars to buy energy or settle trade. Demand for USD drops, the dollar weakens, and worst of all, the US loses its privilege to print limitless money. Foreign investors are losing appetite for US bonds, forcing interest rates higher, which inflates America's debt burden, already over $36 trillion. This is the nightmare spiral. Higher rates, higher debt, lower trust, even higher rates. For the first time, the US risks a modern sovereign bond crisis. Meanwhile, America faces a strategic supply shortage of critical materials, niobium, cobalt, and rare earths, controlled by Brics. Every missile, jet turbine, and targeting system depends on them. If the West once controlled oil through the petrodollar, Brics now controls the metals that power the future.